Welcome to Bigger Than You, the podcast to help you go from overwhelm, self-doubt and scarcity in your business to the calm, grounded and unshakably confident version of you that's going to bring your vision to life. You've got a mission and a purpose that's bigger than you and your limiting stories and beliefs. So let's get you out of your own way. I'm Jenna Holloway, your host and multi-award-winning intuitive hypnotherapist and mindset coach. Expect to hear game-changing perspective shifts on how to align your subconscious mind with your boldest goals, and will unlock the power of energetics, infusing it into every aspect of your life and business for maximum impact. Are you ready? Then let's dive in. Hello, thank you so much for joining me again. I'm really excited. I know I literally say this every single time, but I am really excited to have a guest on the show today. Alyssa Sokol is an astrophysicist. She has a PhD in astrophysics. She also has intuitive abilities, and she has a passion for connecting science and consciousness. Alyssa's goal is to live from an intuitive and conscious place whilst teaching the collective more about our connection to the cosmos and more about the universe in general. We are in for a treat, guys. She also represents the spiritual side from the academic perspective, both in acknowledging the importance of consciousness in the way we operate from day to day and offering her unique science perspective and explanation where she can. So thank you so much for joining us and welcome, Alyssa.
Hi, thanks. Happy to be here.
And happy Thanksgiving as well, because we're recording this on Thanksgiving.
We are.
So yeah, where do we start? I'm going to ask, first of all, Alyssa, how did you get into this?
Yeah. So I've been into astronomy and astrophysics since high school. Basically, like I think kind of I took some brief elective, and then some switch went off where all of a sudden I was just like, I need to know everything about the whole universe. It was just kind of like, it happened pretty quickly. And then I've always been kind of like math, physics brained, as opposed to like reading and writing and literature and all those things. Like I've always been a little bit more cut and dry brained. So then, yeah, I started taking physics classes, and then I went to college for astrophysics. And then I kind of just, yeah, I really just, I just loved it. I think it was just something that's like in my DNA, you know? And then I just decided that I needed to know everything. I needed to know more, and I didn't know what else to do. So I went to grad school, and I got my PhD. And that was definitely like a dream come true. And then it wasn't till like, I never knew exactly where I was going with it, but I didn't mind because it was always just such a passion. And I just wanted to know, just space and everything intrigued me so much. And then it wasn't until kind of about like halfway through grad school where I really started leaning more into my spiritual side. I always was very spiritual, like just kind of growing up. We grew up in a house where we would watch Long Island Medium and the Medium shows, you know, so I was always very open-minded. But then once I got into graduate school, kind of around 2020, when a lot of things really started shifting and like my spiritual side really opened up. And it was just so wild because I'm like learning all these things about the universe from this different consciousness side, and then I'm learning different things about like aliens and the existence of other beings or in different realms or all these things that can be really out there to some people. And so this is like kind of in the height of the pandemic, half of my brain is expanding in this one direction, and then I'm like doing my academic things, and I'm around all these people that have no idea of all of these other things that my brain is expanding with. But so then it kind of just like made me start to realize that like I do want to connect these things. And it felt like I was seeing something that like nobody else was in a way, or people in academia weren't, because I was just starting to get involved in this whole new community online and just like learning all this information. And so I kind of just, I just started like realizing like, oh, maybe I'm meant to like, I'm have this curiosity that I just feel like the people in academia around me don't. I'm just like, there's another piece. There's this consciousness piece. Like everything is alive. Everything has souls. Like I really believe that like souls inhabit celestial bodies. And I just know there's so much that we don't know. 95% of the universe is largely unknown. And it's just, I'm kind of just seeing everyone in academia they're looking in great places, but they're looking to fill in the rest of the pieces that are in the category of like what we already know. They're not looking to like fill in this gap of this whole mystery of consciousness and how that fits into the equation. So that's kind of what I really started getting interested in. And then I started developing my own intuitive abilities, or I started realizing that this was going to be my path, like using my own intuitive abilities. And then this year I really strengthened all of that stuff. And I took, like, so your client, Jenny, Starseed Academy, I think that's kind of like where we connected. I took one of her like psychic development courses this year and really started strengthening my channel. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of just, I have this natural, the way that my brain works is really trying to understand like what universal laws could describe this consciousness, like, because I really believe that there's life that exists elsewhere. I think that we have the ability to telepathically connect with it. And so just kind of starting to think like, what are these, and there's also just these other concepts like karma and these reverberations and these general like intangible concepts. And so the way my brain has been working so far is like, there must be some universal law to describe these things. And it's kind of the direction that I'm going towards. And I kind of just have this like insatiable desire to know. And this year has been actually really, really cool for me. Like I've had a lot of new ideas. Like I feel like I'm starting to develop my own theories now and like some of my own ideas, like a lot of which maybe could involve, yeah, kind of how like how time is not linear and like all these things, if we can get like more into it, but just things like that, like how it does, like time is not linear. And so I just have these different perspectives that I'm just trying to bring into what I understand from academia and quantum entanglement and all these things. My thesis was on black holes. So yeah, so this is just kind of this kind of like how I got to it. It started off just at astrophysics, and then I started the spiritual side, and I was like, oh, this is what lights me up. So this is, nobody else is looking at it in academia.
It's so exciting. Like I'm so excited that you are here doing this work, because I feel like you are gonna connect the two communities. Like on one side, you've got the scientists and people who are very closed off to the spiritual, and it's like, well, if I can't see it, then it doesn't exist. And it's just like it's a very close, like you say, that they're doing the research on the things that they already know exist, and that's not going to get you very far, is it? Because you have to have more of an open mind. There's so much that we don't know. And then on the other side of the field, you've got all of the spiritual people, and this is kind of where I'm sitting, and like I'm married to a scientist, and I'm like, oh, I really want him to hear this, and come on, Alyssa. Because you're the person that's gonna like merge these two together, because you are both. So how do you, like, I'm really curious of your experience of how do you, if you were in a room full of scientists who are closed-minded, closed off to all of the spiritual and the things that we can't see, the intangibles, how do you get them to open up to your, like, to our kind of way of thinking?
Yeah, I think we're definitely still in some very early stages with this, but it's interesting because this is exactly like, these are the things that I need to think about, because this is the path that I've chosen for myself to like work on explaining these things to people. It feels like right now, almost like part of my purpose has just been to like, just purely existing and sharing that I'm interested in this and making other academics uncomfortable and confused with my interest is where it almost feels like the state is the state of the field is right now, because it's just so interesting. Like, I don't know, at least in the academia that I know, obviously all I can speak from is my own experiences, but it is, yeah, now that I have finished my PhD, and it's like, the thing is, the field of astrophysics, like, so at least like astrophysics, like it is pretty small. And it's like, once you spend so much time in academia, like you kind of know, exactly like where the peak of research is and everything. And you kind of know where people's minds are at. But anyway, it's kind of, I really only started telling people about it more openly, like shortly after my PhD, and like when I went back to visit my department and everything. And they're just, I think, yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, I feel like it's going to take a little while, or I feel like right now, just simply mentioning the fact that like there is some interest in consciousness and like how consciousness affects these things, like I've gotten very interesting, confusing blank stares. And so it kind of feels like maybe right now I just need to trigger people a little bit by not fitting in the mold, by not wanting to take some like traditional research job, by wanting to expand. Because yeah, just seeing the reactions that I've gotten already, I'm kind of like, oh, these people don't think about this at all. And these are people that have the whole universe in their brain for the whole day. And I know it's hard for other people to like, understand the mindset of an astronomer or something, but these are, we're all people that think about billions of galaxies at once. And we are constantly thinking about the whole universe. And then I mentioned the word consciousness or something, and they're just like, huh? And so people don't really think about it. So I feel like maybe that, for starters, is just like shining a light on the fact that like there's another piece of the equation that's going on, or there maybe spirituality is a way to explain some of these things. But in general, but there is like kind of, I think the easiest way to connect the science piece into it is our bodies and our energy bodies and everything, because it's a bit of a leap right now with the astrology. Obviously, like the astrology is kind of the most natural overlap with astronomy and everything, and that's where we're getting into forces beyond gravity. That's where we're getting into like different kinds of forces. But with I think and this is why the spirituality part is so natural, because it starts with the body, and it starts with our soul, and the fact that our hearts generate an electromagnetic field, which is our aura. So that is actually the most natural starting place to like scientifically start to describe our soul, our aura, our energy. And that's also, as you know, since you teach it all, that's where it starts, right? It starts in your body. And so this is why this is kind of like, yeah, the transition point. But our hearts are an electromagnetic field is generated from moving charges, and our heart's pumping blood is moving charges, and that generates our aura, and that's our soul's essence. And then I think our energy body magnetically is interacting with the world on a quantum level, because just changing your insides and changing your inner world reflects your outer world. So there's physics that we don't understand how that works, but there's some kind of something happening there. But then just the fact that we have an energy body, that's obviously indisputable. You can't deny that there's some kind of energetic field around people. So I think that that's the best starting point to bridge the science and the spirit. Yeah.
Oh, there's so many different ways we could go with this.
Yeah.
One thing that I don't know why it's coming through to say it, but we're all living a different reality, in the sense that depending on your beliefs and your perceptions, and the way you see things, we are all living a different reality. And so yeah, like we only ever experience things, how we experience the world around us is a reflection of what's going on internally. And so I find it fascinating, and just so like I experience life so differently when I learned that concept of your reality is your reality, and you are on your own planet, you are the center of your own universe, and nobody else around you is experiencing life the way you are. It's all different for everybody.
Yeah, from everything just down to our eyes, like the filter of our eyes, and how our belief system like affects what we physically see, because this is a malleable reality. Like this matrix is malleable. And so it's just, there's a lot of things that are existing in front of you that you can't see, obviously, that there's ways to kind of make this reality not so rigid, and to have things pop in and out of vision and based on your beliefs. And this is more like the quantum mechanics of it, like the expectation, like whatever you expect, you can see a range of things in your reality. So yeah, it really is dependent on you.
You talk more into that, because if somebody's listening, they're like, what is she on about? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. So I think that basically in a lot of quantum physics and quantum mechanics, there's these probability functions. So it kind of like looks like a bell curve. And I think that a lot of our reality in terms of the different timelines that you can take. So you start a day and there's like all these different possible timelines for the way that your day can look. And so I almost see that as like a probability function. Like this is the most probable, like there's like a bunch of most probable timelines that you might take throughout your day, but then there's all these other improbable ones or whatever. And I think on the grand scheme, I think that there are divine timing and placements in place to keep you on a certain track. But then I think the in between, there's a lot of choice that we have in terms of what direction we take. And so I think there's like for every choice, there's kind of a set of probabilities. And then I see the world around us, like what we take in is based on what we expect to see. So if you are observing, right, because everything does happen through our eyes, and there is this like observational entanglement where like when you're observing something, there's a back and forth interaction to that. But essentially, I think that, yeah, just simply the way that you're seeing the world, you see what you would expect to see. So as soon as you open your expectations, and this is like, yeah, like you broaden your function, you broaden what's possible to see. And yeah, and then you can allow in more things.
That's like another way of describing anything is possible. Like the only limits we place on ourselves are ourselves. And this is where you get like miracle stories of people healing from, you know, quote unquote incurable diseases. Well, the brain, like the body's capacity to heal is incredible. You know, you just need to read Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life, and there's just so many stories of it, and it's just about our belief, because this is kind of where I'm coming from. The subconscious looks for the evidence of what you believe to be true. So if you believe something is possible that nobody else thinks is possible, then you can make that happen, because the subconscious will support you if it believes it's possible. Like the 4-minute mile, right? Nobody thought that was possible, but Roger Bannister did. And then he made it happen, and then straight afterwards.
Yeah, I think that those kinds of stories are like the best example of how we're just, you know, we're only limited by our beliefs. And then there's also the fact that your intention and sending energy out is so possible, because you can send energy out through your intention, and you can, you know, charge things, and you can send energy into your body, and you can, you know, send white light into your cells, or you can send more love into your cells, or you can send intention into water. And it's just like, these things are very real.
Like there's a couple of experiments coming to mind. There's the one about, I think it's a Japanese scientist speaking to water, and the makeup of the water changed depending on the words that were being said, whether they were loving, positive words or hateful words. It's just absolutely crazy. Like, it was not crazy, it's science, but it's like when we're open to what the science that is already there is saying, it's just game changing. The other thing is about Greek meditation, and how, I can't remember like the details of it, but just Google it. Like, I think it was in New York, they did mass meditation, and it dropped, like significantly dropped the crime rate.
Yeah, exactly. These things are crazy. And I think so then there's also like our magnetic field like is interacting with the Earth's magnetic field. And so there is this exchange that we have, and there is this kind of like coexistence that there's more happening in the interactions between you and the Earth, and the different placements and locations that people are at. And there's kind of just this larger system at play, you know.
What would you love more people to know? Like, I just want to pass the mic over to you, Alyssa, and just what do you want people to know?
Let's see. I feel like, well, I think I would like people to, I guess, maybe be a bit more curious about just the universe and how and I think like the way that we, yeah, like more about our connection to the universe. And I think that's I think what's underlying like why I'm doing, or why I'm so interested in what I'm doing, because there is this connectivity and there is this whole idea of like, oh, we're just a piece of whatever, or a cog in the wheel, we don't matter, and all these things. And I think that is what is inspires me and makes me so curious, because there is this spirituality, there is this soul connectivity to like just how we have these like divine connections of with different souls on this planet. And you see someone, and you feel this instant connection, or you've had these past lives. I just think that there's a whole story being played out by the galaxies and by the stars, and there's all these connections. And for example, like galaxies are colliding with each other in space, and I think that there's like this larger divine picture that's kind of driving things to each other. And so it's like, well, I'm trying to understand how, how our souls are infused into the bigger dance of the universe. And I do think, and like we did come from all these things, and I think we do have, we have other incarnations on other planets or as other celestial beings. And I think that it's part of us, and I think that it will also help us understand, just understanding that Gaia, our planet, is a soul, that our sun is a soul. It kind of just, I think, infuses a new meaning, or like a new way to view life, because there is this connection that we have to our planet, and a reason that we are incarnated with our planet. And yeah, I just think that there's so much, yeah. And then just on the larger picture of the universe, there is so much that we don't know. And obviously, it would be so silly to rule out all these things if we if we, just because we think that something's not possible. There's yeah, there's like one of the biggest mysteries in terms of like quantum entanglement, or just in terms of like having people be aware of, I guess maybe now I guess switching gears to like, what should people know about like astronomy or something, or things that we don't know. I feel like these basic these basic unanswered questions sometimes like blow people's mind, or that they don't understand that these are some of the things that we don't know in the field. Like one of the things is there's this connection between, there's supermassive black holes that exist at the center of every galaxy. And a lot of the evidence is showing that these supermassive black holes have some kind of connection with the properties of the rest of the galaxy. And that's actually not explicable by gravity, because classical gravity should say, because the physical radius of the supermassive black hole is very, very tiny. So gravity actually kind of goes more so by that. So gravitationally, the black hole should only know about its surroundings, but the black hole actually knows about a lot of other properties in the galaxy. We have no idea how this works. And this is like a big open question. And this is a bit of what my thesis was on. And so I just think kind of being aware of these bigger open questions, even though I don't know, there's a lot of people that love space, obviously, and then there's some people that can't think about it because it freaks them out too much. But I don't know, just things like that, like what a cool concept. Like, how does that work? Like their quantum entanglement, like there's some kind of communication system, and it cannot be answered. Like there's no answer that astronomers have. There's no explanation.
Can you talk to us about like what is quantum entanglement?
Yes. So I would say quantum entanglement is when two particles can know about each other, or have connections with each other, that where the space that space, their space is too far apart to have a gravitational influence. So yeah, some kind of force or some kind of connection between two particles that gravity cannot explain.
Okay, what do we mean in the like particles? because what's in my mind, which might be completely off field here, but is it anything to do, trees communicate with each other, and like there's one type of species of tree, I think it's either a US or Canada, and it only blooms like once every 17 years or something like random like that, but they all bloom at exactly the same time, and they're talking to each other. And I don't know if we know about that. Is that like, am I completely missing the mark, or is that anything to do with it?
No, I think that it would be something like that, also kind of under the category of like telepathy. I mean, telepathy is another version of quantum entanglement, because quantum entanglement is kind of just any situation like that where the distance is too far for there to be a direct physical communication,
right,
or like
okay.
some sort of gravitational influence,
Yes.
something that transcends space. And that's really kind of the biggest mystery of all of this. Like, what spirituality, like, okay, so astronomers we're studying the universe with this assumption that space is a real thing and that we can't communicate with a galaxy that's billions of light years away. I disagree, because then spirituality says everything is actually overlapping and connected, and you can, your energy, like if I'm having a psychic Zoom reading with Jenny on Zoom, she can tap into my energy and transcend space. So so it's like currently astrophysics is being studied assuming that space matters, when then here I'm developing my intuitive abilities, I'm learning, my mind is expanding all in spirituality, and I'm like, space doesn't matter. You can tap into something with your intention. So how does our intention cut through space and time to be able to like interact with something else? And how does that work? That means there has to be some kind of overlap, some kind of everything on some plane that exists above the physical plane has to all combine into a singular point.
Oh, I love this. And how do you go about explaining? Because I consciously think, well, I don't understand. I've heard it and I believe it, but I don't understand it. The concept of time doesn't exist, and past, present, and future, they are all as one. Like, can you try and explain that?
Yeah, I love the topic of time. I think so. Yeah, like this is one of the things that's the most interesting, because I think time is linear from one perspective. So it is true that we obviously experience linear time. So I like the way that I view time is just from different perspectives. So from our zoomed in perspective, time is linear. Then the way that I can best like interpret time at that. So I think we need a way to understand time that describes it as circular or cyclical. So once you start thinking of time, so like everything is rotating and orbiting in the universe, like truly everything, our galaxy rotates, our solar system, our planets are orbiting around the sun. Everything is in this kind of circular, cyclical motion. So everything, like our galaxy is always experiencing cycles, just at least in terms of its rotation. So if you could explain time from a cyclical perspective, where it just cycles, and like one unit of time is like one cycle, and then it also can keep going. But then in that sense, so then this is where I would think that so then this is where we break away from the linearity of time, and this is where we get away from the way that astronomers study it, because the way that we study time in the universe is there was the Big Bang. I mean, we don't have an answer to what was before the Big Bang. I'm not even sure if the Big Bang theory is true. I would be willing to say, I would be like, come on, it's 2023. Like, look at what's happening in the consciousness evolution. Like, let's update these things. Or just say, let's leave some room to say the Big Bang theory might not even be true. But so everyone's saying, okay, there's a Big Bang, and the way that we study galaxy evolution, because that is what I studied for my thesis, like the larger scale universe and how galaxies evolve, is like we say there was a time since the Big Bang. But from another perspective, time is infinite or time is circular. So I think from that way, we would have to reframe the picture of like the shape of the universe or the entirety of the universe to then be like circular or cyclical. And I had this idea that was about how this was kind of something that was just like downloaded, just intuitive, just kind of came out of nowhere. I had this idea about like the universe being a magnet, because in magnets there is this interaction between the North and South Pole, and there's a continuity, right? So it's like, if we need to find another way to explain the universe that's not start to finish, that's the linear arrow of time. So how do we make it like a circle of time if there's some kind of constant interaction between two poles, like a North and South pole or something? That would introduce maybe more of like a cyclical thing. So that's kind of like where my mind is leading on in terms of that discussion of time. I'm trying to think, okay, if time is not only linear, how do we think of the universe as just a series of cycles, or just a constant, just something where there's constant motion? Because that's the thing, there is constant motion, and like our magnetic field, the reason it keeps going is because it's constantly pumping. Our hearts are constantly pumping, so it's constantly moving energy through us. So there has to be some other explanation like that, something that circles back on itself to explain that time is not only linear, that it can repeat in cycles. It's crazy.
I don't know where to go next. It's just like, oh, it's I'm trying to let go of this thing that I have said my whole life. Like when Tom and I, whenever we kind of have a date night, we end up, you know, the kids have got a sleepover, and we end up walking along the seafront after going for a meal, and we can, if it's a cloudless night, we can see the stars, and my mind boggles, and I'm like, oh, we're so small. I'm just trying to kind of, I don't know, like I would love to know, how do you experience life, not like as tiny human being, a drop, a speck in like a speck of sand in the grand scheme of things? How do you manage to live like life knowing how big the universe is?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I might just be too used to it at this point. It's so funny, like, because it's just been so much of my life that I've been thinking about the whole universe. So sometimes I think that, like, yeah, sometimes I definitely am always thinking about the other perspective on like the people that don't think about the universe at all, and they just hear me like, oh, the whole universe, it's a sphere, it's a circle, it's all these things, and I'm like, this must be overwhelming. So yeah, I mean, I just think, yeah, in terms of like how I think there's definitely for me a part that I've been thinking about it for so long, so it doesn't really phase me that much. But I just kind of, I see it all in like the way that I don't see it as all so far away. I see it as just one big unit, just our universe. So I'm just like, yeah, we're just in our universe. And it's kind of, it feels like more comforting actually, that the fact that I think about it so much, it just feels like it's more of a mental reference point instead of just being like, oh, maybe it's, I think maybe that's the way that it helps, instead of just because I know more about the universe now after all these years. I'm like, oh yeah, like I feel like I could just be right next to this galaxy that I studied. I'm like, oh yeah, I see pictures of these things. Like, it's not that scary. Because yes, it's like having a mental picture of it makes it just be like, oh yeah, it's our universe. Yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah. That's always what I kind of, yeah, I feel. But like since I became spiritual, I am much more comforted by it, because I don't feel alone, like at all. You know, yes, we're on this planet, but I don't feel alone. I always feel supported. What was the thing that came through just now? Yeah, I would love your perspective on the collective consciousness. And it said that it's being raised slowly, right? People are slowly waking up to being conscious, and at the same time there's so much ugliness happening on the planet. But from my kind of perspective, I'm like, well, yeah, that's happening because we're all focusing, not we, but people generally are focusing on the negativity over and over again, because unfortunately the brain is primed to be negative and to focus on the danger. And then with the advancement of technology and like media and everything, we used to live in our little village and not know about anything going on in the outside world. So now we know about all of the atrocities, and unfortunately because of the news, the negative stuff sells more, and so it's just more and more and more negativity, and that's where we're placing our energy. So of course we're getting more of that. But then there are the people who, you know, are becoming conscious and doing their soul's purpose work to raise the collective consciousness. And so we are, you know, hopefully slowly turning the tide. But that's my perspective. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that we are turning the tides. I think there's an astrophysical explanation for what's happening on the planet now too. I think this is kind of this is a fated time, but we're in a process, we are in a cycle. And so I think that the solar system is moving through some kind of high energy radiation belt that is a part of this cycle. And that's the thing. I think that consciousness is kind of like, it's like another, it's almost like another just another property of the planet. It's just like, you know, just like a planet has a mass, planet has a volume, and it has a level of consciousness. And I think that sometimes there's, and just like any other property, sometimes there's cycles that change it and that shake things up, or it evolves. And I think that that's like another way to kind of just look at this evolution in consciousness. I think there probably is a lot more to the picture. But in terms of, there's also so there's like a level of consciousness that the planet is vibrating on. It's literally measurable in the frequency. And so that's why when the humans that are on the planet raise their consciousness, it's affecting the overall frequency of the planet too, because our energy streams down and absorbs into Earth, and there's a very physical interaction that's happening, I think. So there's this transition, but there's also this you know, there's light and dark in the universe, and so not everything is light. And I think that there's a lot of karma on this planet, and there's anytime actions are imprinted in the akashic, in the quantum field, and there's imprints of action. So I think that what's happening right now is because there's a history of this planet of darkness or different beings, and everything is imprinted into the karmic field of the Earth. So everything has to have that balance, or everything needs to be revisited. And I think before this transition of consciousness that's happening. And so I think that's the darkness that's playing out, or just anytime we are seeing that, it's there are, like, you just can't deny that there's energetic imprints that have been left on Earth, and they kind of need to be played out now again in this current round of incarnations. And I think that's what's happening, and there's like just so much coming to the surface. And I think that it is kind of just a necessary part of like this release and purging and everything that's contributing to this consciousness evolution.
Mm-hmm. You know, when you said about the energy can be read and it's detectable, what's the name of that? Is it Schumann?
The Schumann resonance. Mm-hmm.
Yes. See, I have seen that, but I don't really massively understand it, and probably a lot of our listeners don't. Can you explain what that is and how does it work?
Yeah. So it's described as, I've heard described as the heartbeat of the Earth. So it's kind of just the Schumann resonance is Earth's standing frequency. So yeah, Earth does also have an electromagnetic field. I think the interior of the a separate conversation. I think the interior of the Earth, though, is maybe not exactly how it is in the textbooks, but I think, but there is, the way that we understand it right now is there is some kind of molten iron core, or nickel iron core of the Earth. And so as it rotates, that's generating, it's also just moving ions, and so also generating an electromagnetic field. And yeah, so just most every body that's emitting an electromagnetic field is going to emit some standing frequency. So that's essentially what the Schumann resonance is. It's the heartbeat. It's measuring the standing frequency of the Earth.
And how is that affected? Is it affected by humans or not?
I think it is affected by humans. I'm not sure exactly how documented that would be, but it's also affected by the energy from the sun. We have been receiving a lot more solar flares and a lot more solar activity. So I think it's affected by that. And I think maybe it's also being affected by whatever else is happening in the solar system. Like if we are moving through an interesting belt of radiation. So I definitely think that that's like, yeah, that's in terms of like the increasing frequency of it. There's also, I was going to say that that's more of a, yeah, probably a topic that's still not very understood. And there is a lot like in terms of the Earth and just our sun that is really not well understood in astrophysics, and a lot of people wouldn't even know that. Like for example, that the solar cycle, we have these the sun has a cycle of 11 years where it's like experiences like a lot of solar activity. We really have no idea what causes this cycle, like why it's 11 years, like what sets that. There's a lot more with the sun that we don't understand, like the temperature of the sun, jumps up to extremely high temperatures on the outside, like increases from it's the temperature of the exterior of the sun, the corona, is almost as hot as the core of the sun, and we don't really understand why. So yeah, I just like bringing up these points that obviously nobody would ordinarily think about, because I think people do think that we know everything about our solar system, or that we would know things about our sun, which it is kind of crazy because we can put together a lot of information about really, really distant galaxies. So you'd think like, oh, we know the sun, like we know the Earth, like, right? The astronomers have that figured out, but it's like, no, like not really. So it's like, that's why I'm out here saying like, why don't we open the third door to like find out what another explanation is, instead of just laughing at astrology? Why don't we like think about it?
Yeah, exactly. Because like another thing is and I'm such an like I'm just I'm right on the outside of this, and like it's like I'm outside a lecture and I like know everything in there is so fascinating, but like trying to wrap my brain around it. But how we as humans, our energy, our emotions, the things that we're able to create and achieve and everything is so affected by the planets, isn't it? And like astrology, like how is that, like, because for example I notice it in my clients, and then I'll see something pop up or on an astrologer's page on Instagram or TikTok or something, and I'm saying, oh right, okay, it makes sense that we're all feeling a crazy surge at the moment because there's something going on with the planets. How does that affect us?
Yeah, I think that there is I think that it's intelligent design. I think that we are an aspect, because this is, I think it's layers of systems of consciousness. It is our solar system is its own unit of consciousness, and the planets have their own frequency, and the planets are living out their own lives, and they're living out their own interactions. And then because we are a part of that, because we are a fractal of that, and in this system of motion, and I think I'm starting to think more recently that a lot of it, that like at the core, it has to do with whatever we're in orbit around, because I think that when we're in orbit around something, that's where you instantly kind of close this gap of time, and you enter a cycle, because as soon as you're in orbit around something, you are entangled with it, you're a part of its system. So because we cannot ignore the fact that that us and the planets together are orbiting around the sun, that makes us instantly, we're entangled, we're in a system together. So because of that, and because consciousness is not only physical and separated by space. And that's why I do think this orbiting motion really kind of ties us into this cycle, ties us into this system, and that, and kind of would be maybe some of the base criteria for us to be considered a unit with the solar system, the fact that we are all orbiting together. And then beyond that, I think that there is, like, it's so interesting. Like, I'm really into Kundalini yoga, which, and just this whole, there's a lot with the intelligence of our design and the colors of our chakra system and our fingers and our hands, and how there's these certain things, and there's these certain meditations in Kundalini yoga that really connect our visualization to, like, the fingers and the planets, and how that really can affect our consciousness, and through our nervous system, and through moving these things and your intention. And the way that I see that is, it's like, I see that, I feel like the intelligent design of our bodies, it was designed as like a micro reflection of the planets and our bigger system. So I feel like our bodies there's like a planetary blueprint in a way that is in our bodies, and our bodies are reflected as within, so without. And so that's kind of the way that I see it, like smaller systems, part of a larger system. And then also it's very much about, and so in terms of like the planets, I think there is, back to like that mysterious quantum entanglement term, I think there is that when you're born, some blueprint is set by the relative positions of the planets, and this is where like angles become more relevant than distance. And my thoughts on astrology are, I kind of like worked backwards to get to my thoughts on astrology, because I very much believe in it. And so I think if the distance to things doesn't necessarily matter, like in astrology birth charts, you see like a lot of it is the angles and what other constellations it's behind. And I think that the planets will kind of illuminate, like the way that I see it is kind of like whatever line of sight that you're making to a certain planet, and they each hold their own frequency, the constellation, the arrangement of the stars behind the planet is holding its own frequency. Everything kind of cascades down to some central point, I think. And there's almost some kind of like snapshot imprint of the frequency from that planet and this planet and the stars behind it, and it all kind of zaps into the center and like creates this blueprint, or creates this the instructional blueprint of your soul and of your body. And then you move with that. So it's constantly moving, because so it's like this entanglement blueprint that's like created at the snapshot of your birth, and then you're moving with those planets, and you're moving with the frequency that was encoded there. But there is obviously the significance to these relative angles that things are forming. So given that, everything kind of comes back to the circle, and everything all bringing you down to this center point that is you, and that all that matters from your soul's birth and the creation of like your lifetime and your blueprint is the frequency, the frequency of everything, and all directions around you is encoded in you.
I love that so much. I've never heard that before. We were saying right at the start, when I asked that question, you said about the planets are around each other, so of course they're affecting each other and they're affecting us. The thing that popped into my mind is we are affected by the people around us. And I say quite often in like the mindset, if you want to have a mindset to support you in your business, choose carefully who you spend your time with, and get in the room with people who have massive goals too, because you are affected by other people's energy. So be more mindful in terms of who you spend your time with and who you have conversations with. Like, we are a mirror of the planets, aren't we, in that respect?
Exactly.
This has been absolutely fascinating, Alyssa. Thank you so much for being here and just dropping so many different open possible ways for people to be like, wow, I want to learn more about that, or wow, I've never thought about it that way. There's just literally so much that can come from this if you're a listener. And yeah, just like, I think that people who are listening are open-minded anyway. You wouldn't be a regular listener of this podcast if you weren't open-minded to it. But if you had, Alyssa, if you had a piece of advice for, let's say, the average human being at the moment, knowing what you know from the science and the spiritual perspective, and you are trying to bring more sort of communication between the two worlds, what would you love for people to be more like or think more like?
I would say learn how to communicate with your universe, like, because there is this mysterious unspoken way that we can, you can talk to the universe, and you can talk to your universe and your spirit guides in your world, and if you pay attention, it will be reflected back to you. And I think that this is kind of the process that, and this is what I've learned that is really part of my process, because I didn't find that it necessarily came easily to like communicate with the universe and observe it talking back to me. And I think that everyone needs to go through their own process from starting from scratch. And I think it's easier for some people, or like maybe some psychic channelers that just started really young or whatever and are able to really connect. But I think that we all have the ability to build our relationship with our own universe through these magical things, through like asking for a synchronicity, through these things. And that is how the magic is revealed to you, and it has to be only revealed to you in your own time. But it's like, also there's also just the simple factor of like, pay attention. When you pay attention to your life and all these things, like it's usually very clearly like telling you something, right? Or just like paying attention to patterns. But yeah, I just think really building you have the ability, it's our duty, or it's our responsibility to build our relationship with our universe. And all that really matters is your own internal universe. Like, you have a whole universe in your aura and your energy, and you're the only one that can really learn how to build that relationship. But like, once you do, you can, that's when the magic is revealed. Like, you have to like start from scratch to discover it. And sometimes it's a weird process and it requires some self-trust. But if you kind of approach it with curiosity, you can figure out how to communicate with the universe. That's what I would say.
So yeah, be more open, be more curious, and look for the signs. They're always there. Like, I'm gonna wrap this up in a second, but had a well, the Bigger Than You coaching hub call, which I literally just started yesterday, and did the first one yesterday. When that idea came through, I kind of like looked, I didn't need to look there, all of the signs were there, like right in my face for the last few months, that everything was nudging me towards that. And I didn't really see it, but obviously divine timing is a thing, so it's come at the right time. But the signs are always, always, always around us, and yeah, when we're open and we look, and we literally, like, some days I just see a sign like every half an hour, and it's just so like so comforting to be like, that's, to me, I take it as a sign that I'm in alignment.
Right. And that's kind of like the proof, right? That's the proof that there is this connectivity. Like, how else would that be possible? That's the proof that like we can be connected with these things that are billions of light years away. I don't know how better the proof gets. Like, when you prove to yourself that you can talk to the universe and it'll talk back to you, the universe is conscious. What else more do you need, right?
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. Thank you so much for being here, Alyssa. If people want to learn more and hear more from you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I have a podcast called The Orphic that I do with my friend Michaela. And she's in Canada, and we talk about, like, I talk about my recent downloads or anything I'm passionate or curious about the universe. We also just talk about our own spiritual processes and get really vulnerable about our own processes that we're going through and talking them out. I think it's helpful for other people. So there's that, The Orphic. It's also on YouTube. But yeah, Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. And then on my Instagram, interdimensional.astrophysics, I'm kind of always sharing new ideas as I have them. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. You're so inspiring. We will pop those in the show notes, of course. And yeah, thank you for being here, Alyssa.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. This is fun.
See you all next week, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Bigger Than You podcast with your host, Jenna Holloway. If this episode has been valuable to you, please share it with a friend or leave a review.